My name is Arturo. I am 54 years old. I live in a quiet neighborhood on the outskirts of Dallas, Texas, and for most of my life, the only thing I ever wanted was to be a good father. I thought I was. I really believed that every sacrifice I made, every dollar I stretched, every night I spent alone after my wife passed it all meant something to my son. But the day I dropped him off at the airport and watched him walk through those terminal doors, I got a text message from our housekeeper that changed everything I believed about the boy I raised. It said, "Do not go home, check the cameras." Before I tell you what I found on those cameras, I want to know where you are listening from right now. Drop your city in the comments below, hit that like button, and make sure you subscribe, because what happened inside my own house while I was saying goodbye to my son is something no father should ever have to see. Let me take you back a bit so you understand who I am and why this story cuts the way it does. I have been a plumber since I was 19 years old. I did not go to college. I did not have some grand career plan. My father left when I was 12, and my mother raised me and my two sisters on a cashier's salary at a grocery store in Fort Worth. By the time I was old enough to work, I knew one thing for certain. I was never going to let my family go without. So I learned a trade. I started as an apprentice under my future father-in-law, a man named Walter, who ran a small plumbing company in the Dallas area. Walter was tough but fair. He taught me how to sweat copper pipes, how to read blueprints, how to show up on time even when your body did not want to move. He also introduced me to his daughter. Lorraine walked into the shop one afternoon to bring her father lunch. She was wearing blue hospital scrubs and had her hair pulled back in a ponytail. And I remember thinking she looked like the kind of woman who could hold the whole world together without complaining about it. She was a nurse at a regional hospital about 20 minutes from the shop. We talked for maybe 5 minutes that day, but I thought about her for weeks. Walter noticed. He told me if I ever broke his daughter's heart, he would break every pipe in my truck. I told him that was fair. We got married when I was 28. Lorraine was 26. 2 years later, our son Dominic was born, and I swear the moment they put that baby in my arms, something shifted inside me permanently. Every job I took after that, every weekend I worked, instead of resting every time I crawled under a house in the Texas heat to fix someone's sewage line, I did it with Dominic's face in my mind. I wanted him to have more than I had. I wanted him to have choices. Lorraine and I bought our house when Dominic was about 5. It was a modest 3-bedroom place with a decent yard and a 1-car garage. Nothing fancy. But to us it was everything. I remember the day we got the keys. Lorraine stood in the empty living room and spun around with her arms out like a little kid. I spent the next several years making that house ours. I laid the hardwood floors in the living room myself, plank by plank on my knees, for 3 straight weekends. I built the wooden fence around the backyard with cedar posts I picked out personally from the lumber yard. I installed the kitchen cabinets, patched the roof twice, and planted a row of crepe myrtles along the front walkway, because Lorraine said they reminded her of her grandmother's house in East Texas. We were not rich. We were never rich. But we were solid. We had dinner together almost every night. Lorraine would come home from the hospital tired, but still smiling, and she would ask Dominic about school while I finished setting the table. Those were the years I hold closest to my chest, when life felt simple and whole, and exactly the way it was supposed to be. Then Lorraine got sick. Dominic had just turned 18, just started his first semester at the University of Texas in Austin, when Lorraine found a lump during a routine self-exam. The diagnosis came back fast and brutal. Breast cancer, stage 3. The next 2 years were a blur of chemotherapy appointments, insurance phone calls, hospital waiting rooms, and the slow grinding process of watching the strongest woman I ever knew get weaker by the month. The medical bills piled up faster than I could work. I sold my 1998 Ford F-150, the truck I had driven for over a decade, the truck I bought with the first real money I ever saved. I sold it to a guy from Plano for $6,000 and used every cent for Lorraine's treatment. I did not hesitate. I did not mourn the truck. My wife needed me. Lorraine passed on a Tuesday evening in March. Dominic was 20. I was 48. The last thing she said to me while I held her hand in that hospital room with the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead was, "Take care of our boy Arturo. Promise me." And I promised her. I looked her in the eyes, and I promised. After the funeral, I threw myself into two things: work and Dominic. I took every plumbing job that came my way, doubles on weekends, emergency calls at midnight, anything to keep the bills paid and Dominic's tuition covered. I took out a loan to make sure he could finish school without worrying about money. I never told him about the loan. I did not want him to feel guilty. There was a woman at my church, Sandra, who started showing interest about a year after Lorraine passed. She was kind. She brought me casseroles and asked how I was doing with a sincerity that felt real. We had coffee a few times, and I will admit it felt nice to have someone look at me like I was more than just a tired man in work boots. But the one time Sandra came to the house for dinner, Dominic barely spoke to her. He sat at the table with his arms crossed, gave one-word answers, and went to his room before dessert. After Sandra left, I stood in the kitchen washing dishes alone, and I made a decision. I chose my son. I called Sandra the next day and told her I was not ready, even though part of me knew I was. I remember one night, it must have been around 2 in the morning. My phone rang, and it was Dominic calling from Austin. He said he had a high fever and felt terrible and did not know what to do. I got in my truck, the replacement truck I bought after selling the Ford, a beat-up Chevy with a cracked dashboard, and I drove 4 hours straight through the dark. When I got to his dorm, Dominic was sitting on his bed with a slight runny nose and a temperature of 99.2. A mild cold, not a real fever at all. But I did not get angry. I made him soup from a can I found in his roommate's cabinet, sat with him until he fell asleep, and drove 4 hours back to make my 8 a.m. job. I never mentioned it again. I am telling you all of this because I need you to understand something. I never once resented any of it. Not the truck, not the loan, not Sandra, not the midnight drives. I believed with everything in me that Dominic understood what I was doing and why. I believed he saw me. I believed the love went both ways, but I was about to learn that believing something does not make it true. Dominic graduated from college and landed a job at a tech company in Seattle. I was proud of him. I told everyone at the hardware store, at church, at every job site. My son works in tech up in Seattle. He is doing well. But after the move, something changed. The phone calls that used to come every few days turned into once a week, then once every couple of weeks, then barely at all. I would call him and the phone would ring 5-6 times before going to voicemail. When he did pick up, the conversations were short. "Yeah, Dad, work is busy. Yeah, everything is fine. I will try to visit soon." Months passed, then close to a year. I started to feel like a man standing on a dock watching a ship pull further and further out to sea, waving at someone who was not looking back. Then, one Wednesday afternoon, my phone rang and it was Dominic. His voice sounded different, warm, almost cheerful. He said he was coming home for the weekend. He wanted to see me, wanted to spend a few days in the old house. My heart nearly came through my chest. I had to sit down on the front porch steps because my knees went soft. I called Gloria right away. Gloria is our housekeeper. I should tell you about her, because she matters deeply to this story. Gloria is a woman in her early 60s, originally from Guatemala. She came to the United States over 30 years ago and has been cleaning houses in the Dallas area for most of that time. I hired her about 3 years ago after Lorraine passed, because I realized I was letting the house go. Dust on the shelves, laundry piling up the kitchen floor, sticky from things I spilled and never properly wiped. Gloria comes twice a week, Tuesdays and Fridays, and she does not just clean. She notices things. She notices if a picture frame is crooked. She notices if I have not been eating because the trash can is empty. She once left a note on my counter that said, "Eat something today, Mr. Arturo," with a smiley face drawn in pencil. I pay her fairly, and she treats my home with more respect than most people treat their own. When I told Gloria that Dominic was coming home, she sounded happy for me. She said she would come in on Thursday an extra day to make sure the house was spotless. I told her I would pay her double for the extra visit, and she said no, just buy her a bag of that coffee she likes from the Mexican grocery on Elm Street. That is the kind of person Gloria is. I went to the store the next day and bought everything I needed for brisket. Dominic loved my brisket growing up. Lorraine used to say I seasoned it with stubbornness because I would stand at that smoker for 14 hours, refusing to let anyone else touch it. I bought a 12-pack of a craft beer I saw Dominic post about on social media a few months back, something from a brewery in Portland. I wanted him to know I paid attention, even from a distance. I cleaned Dominic's old bedroom myself before Gloria even got there. I did not change anything about the room. His high school baseball trophies were still on the shelf. A poster of some band he liked at 16 was still taped to the wall. I just put on fresh sheets, opened the window to let the air in, and wiped down the nightstand. Then I went to the mantel in the living room where we keep the family photo. The three of us, Lorraine, Dominic, and me, taken at a barbecue when Dominic was about 10. I picked it up and cleaned the glass with my shirt. I looked at Lorraine's face in that photo, and I told her our boy is coming home. Friday evening, I picked Dominic up at Dallas-Fort Worth International. When he came through the arrivals gate, I barely recognized him for a second. He was taller than I remembered, somehow broader in the shoulders, wearing a nice jacket I had never seen before. He smiled when he saw me and walked over and hugged me. I held on to him probably longer than I should have. He smelled like airplane air and cologne, and for a moment I was just a father holding his son, and nothing else mattered. That first night was everything I hoped for. I served the brisket, and Dominic said it was the best I ever made. He had 2 plates. We sat at the kitchen table, and he told me about his job, about Seattle, about the rain, and the coffee shops and the mountain views. I just sat there listening, drinking my beer, slowly feeling full, in a way that had nothing to do with food. But there were things I noticed that I chose to overlook. Small things. Dominic kept stepping out onto the back porch to take phone calls. He would lower his voice and turn away from the windows. I told myself it was probably work. Then, on Saturday morning, he asked me where I kept the house documents. The deed, the insurance papers, that kind of thing. He said he wanted to make sure everything was in order in case something ever happened to me. I was touched. I thought, look at that, my boy is thinking about his old man. I told him everything was in the top drawer of my bedroom dresser in a manila folder. He nodded and thanked me. On Saturday afternoon, Dominic said he was going to meet up with some old friends from high school who were still in the Dallas area. I told him to have a good time, but as he walked out the front door, I noticed he was wearing a dark blazer and dress pants, pressed shirt, nice shoes. I thought it was a little much for catching up with old buddies at a bar, but I shrugged it off. I told myself he was just used to dressing up now that he lived in a big city. Sunday came too fast. I drove Dominic back to the airport. We did not talk much in the car, just the kind of comfortable quiet that fathers and sons sometimes share. When I pulled up to the departures terminal, Dominic turned to me and said, "Thanks for everything, Dad. I really mean it." He hugged me across the center console, grabbed his bag from the back seat, and walked into the terminal. I sat there for a minute, watching him disappear through the sliding glass doors. Then I pulled away from the curb, turned on the radio to a country station, and started driving home with a warmth in my chest that I had not felt in a very long time. The windshield had a thin layer of fog from the morning chill. I turned on the defroster and watched the glass slowly clear. A song came on that Lorraine used to hum something about coming home, and I smiled to myself. Then my phone buzzed once in the cup holder. I figured it was Dominic texting that he made it through security. I picked it up at a red light and read the message. It was from Gloria. It said, "Do not go home, check the cameras." That smile I had on my face. That was the last real smile I wore for a long time. I pulled over immediately. Not at home. I was not about to go home until I understood what Gloria meant. I turned into the parking lot of a convenience store about 2 miles from my neighborhood, put the truck in park, and called Gloria. She picked up on the first ring. Her voice was not calm. Gloria is usually a steady woman, but that morning she sounded shaken. She told me she had come to the house at her regular Friday schedule to clean, but since Dominic had been visiting, she also came in that Sunday morning to do a quick pass, change the towels, vacuum the guest room. She said when she walked into my bedroom to strip the bed linens, she noticed the top drawer of my dresser was slightly open. Not the way I usually leave it. Gloria knows my habits better than I do. She looked inside and saw that the manila folder with my documents had been moved. Papers were not in the order she had seen them before. Gloria is not the type to snoop, but she could tell something was off. Then she found something under the kitchen table. A business card. It had fallen between the table leg and the baseboard, easy to miss, unless you were on your hands and knees scrubbing the floor, which is exactly what Gloria does. She picked it up and read it. The card belonged to a real estate attorney. Not a family lawyer. Not an estate planner. A real estate transaction attorney. Gloria knew I was not selling my house. She knew I had no plans to move. So she texted me. I sat in that parking lot with my engine idling and opened the security camera app on my phone. I installed those cameras about 2 years ago after a string of petty thefts hit our neighborhood. Someone was stealing packages off porches, and a couple of houses got broken into while families were at work. I put in 3 cameras, one in the living room, one in the hallway, and one at the front door. They record continuously and store footage for 30 days on a cloud server. I had honestly forgotten about them most of the time. I never imagined I would be using them to watch my own son. I scrolled back to Saturday afternoon, the day Dominic said he was going out to see friends. The timestamp read 2:14 p.m. I had left the house around 1:45 to run to the hardware store for a faucet washer I needed for a Monday job. Dominic was supposed to be gone already, but the camera showed him still in the living room at 2:14, standing near the front door, checking his phone. At 2:21, the doorbell rang. Dominic opened it. 2 people walked in. The first was a man in a gray suit carrying a leather briefcase. He looked to be in his early 40s, clean-shaven professional. The second was a younger woman, maybe early 30s, with short brown hair and a laptop bag over her shoulder. Dominic shook both their hands and led them to the kitchen table. My kitchen table. The same table where I served him brisket the night before. The camera in the living room had a wide enough angle to capture most of the kitchen area. I watched all three of them sit down. The man opened his briefcase and spread papers on the table. The woman opened her laptop, and Dominic leaned forward like he was running the meeting. The cameras have audio. I turned up the volume on my phone and pressed it to my ear, sitting in that convenience store parking lot, with the windows up and the world outside completely unaware of what was unraveling inside my chest. The man in the gray suit was a real estate lawyer. The woman was a property broker. Dominic was talking about my house. He said the house is in a prime location. He said the neighborhood is developing fast, new restaurants, new shops, property values going through the roof. He said my father has no idea what this place is actually worth. He thinks it is maybe worth a couple $100,000 at most. But I have done the research. This area has tripled in value. The lawyer asked about ownership documents. Dominic said he knew where they were kept and that he would get copies. The broker asked a question that made my stomach turn. She said, "Is your father on board with this?" And Dominic answered without hesitation. He said, "My father is getting older. He does not understand this kind of thing. I will handle it. I am his only son. The house will be mine eventually anyway." I sat there gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles went pale. But it got worse. The broker asked Dominic whether he intended for me to remain in the house after a sale. Dominic laughed. It was a short laugh, the kind that comes out when someone finds a question almost silly. He said he can rent a small apartment somewhere. A plumber does not need a big house. I heard that laugh through the tiny speaker of my phone, and something inside me cracked. Not broke. Cracked. Like a pipe under too much pressure that has not burst yet, but you can hear the metal giving way. I kept watching. Dominic stood up and gave the lawyer and the broker a tour of my home. He walked them through the living room, pointed out the hardwood floors I installed with my own hands. He showed them the backyard, the fence I built, the garden beds I dug. He said the backyard has expansion potential, like he was selling a product instead of showing strangers through his father's life. I closed the app. I set my phone down on the passenger seat, and I sat in that parking lot for close to an hour. I did not cry. I did not scream. I just sat there feeling like someone had reached into my lungs and pulled out all the air slowly, handful by handful, until there was nothing left. After a while, I picked up my phone again. I was not done. I needed to see everything. I needed to know exactly how deep this went before I decided what to do. I opened the camera app and scrolled to Saturday evening after Dominic came back from wherever he actually went that afternoon. The footage showed him sitting on the living room couch around 10:30 p.m. I had gone to bed early that night around 9 because I was tired from cooking and because I felt content for the first time in months. I thought my son was home. I thought everything was good. So I slept peacefully while Dominic sat in my living room and made a video call. The camera picked it up clearly. Dominic was talking to a young woman on his phone screen. She had dark hair and a sharp smile, and she was leaning close to the camera on her end, like she was excited. I had never seen her before. Dominic had never mentioned her. Not once in any conversation. Not during the visit. This was someone he deliberately kept hidden from me. Dominic told her everything is going according to plan. He said the old man believes every word I say. He said he just needed to get the property paperwork sorted, and they would have enough for a down payment on a penthouse apartment in Seattle. The woman asked if I suspected anything. Dominic shook his head. He said not a chance. He said he cooked brisket with me and hugged me, and that I got emotional. He said it like it was a tactic that had worked not a moment between a father and son. The woman laughed. She said, "You are good at this." Dominic smiled and leaned back on my couch in my living room under the roof I maintained for decades and said, "He is easy." I closed the app again. This time I felt something different. Not just pain, something colder, something clearer. Like the fog had burned off and I could see the whole landscape for the first time. I scrolled to one more clip. Early Sunday morning around 6:15 a.m. while I was still sleeping. The hallway camera caught Dominic walking quietly to my bedroom door. He opened it, slowly slipped inside. I switched to the living room camera, which partially showed the hallway. A few minutes later, Dominic came back out holding his phone. I could see from the motion of his hands that he had been taking photographs. He had gone into my dresser, pulled out the manila folder, and photographed every document inside. The deed to the house, the insurance papers, my handwritten will from the year Lorraine died. He even found my savings account booklet and photographed the account number. I called Gloria. She answered immediately, like she had been sitting by the phone waiting. I told her what I saw, all of it. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "I had a feeling something was wrong since I found that business card this morning. A real estate transaction lawyer has no reason to be in your house unless someone is trying to sell it. And I know you are not selling." Gloria told me not to go home that night. She said I needed time to think clearly without being surrounded by the evidence of what just happened. She said I could come to her place, that she had a sofa in the living room and clean towels. I almost said no out of habit, out of pride, out of that stubborn part of me that wants to handle everything alone. But something in her voice made me realize she was right. I needed to step away from that house even for one night to figure out my next move. I drove to Gloria's home. It was a small house in a working-class neighborhood about 15 minutes from mine. Neat front yard, a chain-link fence, potted plants on the porch steps. She met me at the door and did not say much. She just stepped aside and let me in. She made me chicken soup, not from a can, from scratch. She stood at her stove stirring the pot while I sat at her kitchen table staring at the wood grain. When the soup was ready, she set a bowl in front of me and sat across the table. We ate in near silence. It was the first meal I had shared with someone in that kind of quiet since Lorraine was alive. After dinner, I talked. I did not plan to, but it came out. I told Gloria about the years after Lorraine died, how I built my entire life around Dominic. How every decision I made was filtered through one question: is this good for my son? I told her about Sandra, the woman from church, how I let her go because Dominic did not approve. I told her about the midnight drive to Austin, about the loan, about the truck. I told her things I had never said out loud to anyone. Gloria listened to all of it. She did not interrupt. When I finished, she looked at me across her small kitchen table and said something I will never forget. She said, "You have been living for someone else for too long. Now it is time to live for yourself." That night I lay on Gloria's sofa with a thin quilt she brought out from a closet. The ceiling fan above me turned slowly with a faint clicking sound on each rotation. I stared at it for hours. I did not sleep. But somewhere in those hours, between midnight and dawn, something shifted inside me. For the first time in years, I started thinking about what I needed. Not what Dominic needed. Not what Lorraine would have wanted. What I, Arturo, needed to do for myself. The next morning, I woke up on that sofa with the sun coming through Gloria's front window. She was already in the kitchen making coffee. Strong, dark, the kind that could wake up a man who had not really been awake for years. She set a cup in front of me and went back to her business without hovering. That is one of the things I appreciate most about Gloria. She helps without smothering. I sat at her kitchen table, looked out the window at her small backyard, where she grew herbs in terracotta pots, and I made a decision. I was not going to call Dominic and yell. I was not going to send an angry text. I was not going to beg him to explain himself or ask him why. I was going to protect what was mine quietly, methodically, and completely. The first call I made was to Raymond. Raymond and I went to the same high school back in Fort Worth. He was the kid who always had his nose in a book, while the rest of us were throwing footballs in the parking lot. He went on to law school, passed the bar, and built a small but solid practice specializing in property rights and estate planning. We stayed in touch over the years, the kind of friendship where you might not talk for 6 months, but when you do it is like no time has passed. I called him that Monday morning and told him everything. Raymond listened without interrupting, which is something lawyers are surprisingly bad at. When I finished, he said 2 things. First, the house is in your name, Arturo. Dominic has 0 legal authority to sell it, transfer it, or do anything with it without your written consent. Second, you need to secure your original documents immediately and update your will. I drove to my house that morning. Walking through the front door felt different than it ever had before. Every room carried a shadow of what I had seen on those cameras. The kitchen table where 3 strangers sat and discussed the value of my life. The living room couch where my son called me easy. The hallway where he crept past my bedroom door while I slept. I gathered every important document from the dresser drawer. The deed, the insurance policy, the handwritten will, my savings booklet. I put them all in a cardboard box and drove them straight to Raymond's office. Raymond locked the originals in his office safe. Then we sat down and drafted a new will. The process took most of the afternoon. Under the new terms, the house would not go to Dominic. Instead, it would be placed in a trust. If I passed away, the property would be sold, and the proceeds divided 3 ways. 1/3 to a breast cancer research foundation in Lorraine's name. 1/3 to a skilled trades scholarship fund for young people in the Dallas area who wanted to learn plumbing, electrical, or carpentry. 1/3 reserved in a care fund for my own medical expenses, should I need long-term care in my later years. Raymond printed it, I signed it, he notarized it, and it was done. That same afternoon, I changed every password on my bank accounts. I added 2-factor authentication. I called my bank directly and told them that no one other than me in person with valid identification was authorized to access or modify my accounts. Tuesday, I called a locksmith. A young guy named Travis showed up in a white van and replaced every lock on every door of my house within 2 hours. New deadbolts, new knobs, new keys. I held those fresh keys in my palm and felt their weight like they meant something more than metal. Wednesday, I upgraded the camera system. I added 2 more units, 1 inside the master bedroom and 1 covering the backyard. I changed the login credentials for the camera app, set up alerts for any motion detection, and backed up the footage from Dominic's visit to an external hard drive that I stored at Raymond's office alongside the documents. Then I did something that felt especially important. I looked up the real estate brokerage that the woman with the short brown hair worked for. I found their office number and I called. I asked to speak with a manager. When I got one on the line, I introduced myself calmly. I said my name is Arturo. I am the sole legal owner of the property at my address. I am not selling. I have not authorized anyone to list or evaluate my property, and any transaction involving my home that does not carry my personal signature is fraudulent. The manager stammered. She put me on hold. A few minutes later, the broker herself got on the phone. She sounded nervous. She apologized and said that Dominic had presented himself as the family representative and that she had no reason to doubt him. I told her she had every reason to doubt anyone who is not the person whose name is on the deed. She apologized again and assured me the file would be closed immediately. After all of that was handled, I did not call Dominic. I did not send a message. I waited. I knew that eventually his plan would hit a wall, and when it did, he would come to me. So I used the waiting time to do something I had been neglecting for years. I took care of my own home for myself. I rearranged the living room for the first time since Lorraine passed. I moved the couch to face the window instead of the television. I hung a new photo of Lorraine on the wall near the kitchen one from before she got sick, where she was laughing at something off camera with the sunlight catching her hair. I went through Dominic's old room and boxed up the things he had left behind years ago that he never came back for. I did not throw them away, but I moved them to the garage neatly labeled "no longer taking up space" in a room that could serve a new purpose. Gloria came by on her regular Tuesday. We sat on the front porch with coffee before she started cleaning. She told me about her daughter back in Guatemala, a woman named Beatrice, who had resented Gloria for years for leaving. Gloria said Beatrice refused to speak to her for almost a decade. But eventually, slowly, Beatrice came to understand why her mother left, and they rebuilt their relationship one phone call at a time. Gloria said sometimes the people we love have to lose us before they realize what they had. I listened to her story, and I nodded, but I did not make any promises to myself about Dominic. I was done making promises on behalf of people who had not earned them. 2 weeks passed. 14 days of quiet. I went back to work. I fixed a burst pipe for a family in Garland, installed a water heater for an elderly couple in Mesquite, repiped a bathroom for a restaurant owner in Deep Ellum. The work felt different now, not like a burden I carried for someone else, but like something I did, because I was good at it, and it was mine. Then, on a Thursday evening, my phone rang. It was Dominic. His voice was not warm this time. It was not cheerful. It was tight-controlled, and underneath the control, I could hear something close to panic. He said, "Dad, I heard you changed the locks on the house." "What is going on?" I did not raise my voice. I said, "Come home and we will talk about it face to face." He argued. He wanted to know why. He wanted me to explain over the phone. I repeated myself calm and steady. "Come home, Dominic. We will talk in person." He hung up. The next day, he booked a flight. He arrived on Saturday. I watched through the new camera feed on my phone as he walked up to the front door, pulled out his old key, and tried it in the lock. It did not work. He tried again. Then a third time. He stood there on my porch for a moment, looking at the key in his hand like it had betrayed him. Then he pressed the doorbell. I opened the door. I did not smile. I did not hug him. I stepped aside and let him in, the way you let a visitor into your home, not the way you welcome your son. He felt the difference immediately. I could see it in his eyes. We sat at the kitchen table. The same chairs. But this time I was the one running the meeting. I opened my laptop, which I had set up beforehand, with the camera footage loaded and ready. I turned the screen to face Dominic and pressed play. He watched himself open the front door for the lawyer and the broker. He watched himself sit at this very table and discuss the value of my home. He heard his own voice say that his father did not understand that a plumber does not need a big house. He watched himself lead strangers through my rooms, past my floors, through my garden, pointing out expansion potential in the yard I built with my own hands. His face drained of color frame by frame like someone slowly turning down a dimmer switch. Then I played the video call with the woman. He heard himself say, "The old man believes everything." He heard her laugh. He heard himself say, "He is easy." I closed the laptop. The kitchen was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator. I spoke slowly. I did not shout. I did not curse. I said I sold the truck I loved to pay for your mother's medical bills. I took out a loan I am still paying off so you could finish college. I turned away a good woman because you could not be bothered to give her a chance. Every decision I made for the last 24 years had your name on it. And you came back to my house, sat at my table, ate my food, hugged me at the airport, and the whole time you were planning to take the roof from over my head. Dominic opened his mouth. He said, "Dad, I was just trying to help you take advantage of the property value. It is a smart financial move." I shook my head. I said I heard everything, Dominic. Every word. I heard you tell that woman I was easy. I heard you laugh about the brisket dinner like it was part of your strategy. I heard you call me old and say I do not understand things. And I watched you sneak into my bedroom at 6 in the morning to photograph my personal documents while I was sleeping. He had nothing to say to that. His jaw tightened and he looked down at the table. I told him what I had done. I said the will has been changed. The house is protected. The documents are secured in a location you will never access. The brokerage has been notified. The locks are new. And every camera in this house is recording right now. Then I stood up. I pushed my chair back and looked down at my son. I said, "You can leave now. When you are ready to come back as my son, not as someone trying to profit off my life, the door is open. But you will have to ring the bell." Dominic stood up slowly. He did not argue. He did not apologize. He picked up his bag from the hallway floor and walked to the front door. He opened it, stepped outside, and pulled it shut behind him without looking back. I stood in the doorway and watched him get into his rental car and drive away. I did not cry. I did not feel anger. I did not feel satisfaction. What I felt was something I had not experienced in so long that I almost did not recognize it. It was self-respect. Pure, unborrowed, earned self-respect. The kind that does not come from anyone else's approval. The kind that comes from finally standing up and saying, "This is mine, and you do not get to take it." The days after Dominic left were not easy. I want to be honest about that, because this is not the kind of story where the hero walks off into the sunset and everything is perfect. The house was quieter than before, which is saying something because it was already quiet. I found myself standing in the hallway, sometimes looking at the door to Dominic's old room, now cleared of his things, and wondering where exactly I went wrong. Was it something I did? Was it something I failed to teach him? Did I love him too much, too easily, in a way that made him think my generosity was weakness? Those questions circled my head, like birds that would not land. I lost my appetite for a while. I would make dinner and then just stare at the plate. A couple of nights I did not sleep at all. I sat in the living room in the dark with the television off, listening to the house settle and creak the way old houses do, and I felt the full weight of being alone. But every morning I got up. I made coffee. I walked out to the backyard and watered the crepe myrtles. I checked on the vegetable garden I started the previous spring, the tomatoes and peppers and herbs that did not care about my family problems and just kept growing because that is what living things do. And slowly, day by day, I started doing something I had not done in over 2 decades. I started paying attention to what I wanted. I signed up for a cooking class at the community center on Tuesday evenings. Not because I needed to learn how to cook. I can make a brisket that would make a grown man weep. But because I wanted to be around people to do something that had nothing to do with work or obligation or sacrifice. The class was taught by a retired caterer named Phyllis, who wore bright scarves and called everyone sweetheart. There were about 12 of us in the group, and 3 of them became real friends. Eugene was a 71-year-old widower who had lost his wife 2 years prior and realized he had never cooked a meal more complicated than scrambled eggs in his entire life. He showed up the first night with a brand new apron still in the packaging and a look on his face like a man reporting for duty. Marguerite was in her late 40s, recently divorced, trying to rebuild a life she said had been controlled by someone else for too long. She had a dry sense of humor and a laugh that could fill a room. Douglas was a former Marine, 63, retired, who said he took the class because his doctor told him to find a hobby that did not involve sitting in a recliner watching cable news. The four of us started meeting for Sunday lunch at a diner near the community center. Just talking, eating, being people together. It was simple and it was good. Around that same time, I found a truck for sale, a 2003 Ford F-150 dark blue sitting in a driveway with a handwritten for sale sign in the windshield. It was not my old truck. It was not the same year or the same color, but it was close enough to feel familiar. The engine needed work. The paint was faded. The tailgate had a dent the size of a basketball. I bought it for $3,800 and spent the next several weekends in my garage bringing it back. New spark plugs, new belts, fresh oil. I sanded the rust spots and repainted the panels myself. When I turned the key and heard that engine catch and rumble to life, I felt something click back into place inside me like a bone that had been out of joint for years, finally settling where it belonged. Gloria continued to come twice a week, but our routine changed. She started arriving a little earlier, and we would drink coffee on the front porch before she began cleaning. Sometimes we talked. Sometimes we just sat there watching the neighborhood wake up. She told me more about Beatrice, about how their phone calls had become weekly, about how Beatrice was thinking of visiting the United States for the first time. I told Gloria about the cooking class, about Eugene's apron, about Douglas's refusal to follow any recipe exactly as written. She laughed and said Douglas sounded like her late husband. One morning, Gloria showed up with a small terracotta pot holding a jasmine plant. She set it on the kitchen windowsill without asking and said every home needs something that is still growing. I left it right there. It is still there now. About 3 months after the confrontation, I received a text message from Dominic. It was short. It said, "I am sorry, Dad. I was wrong. I am not ready to talk yet, but I wanted you to know that." I read it sitting at the kitchen table. I set the phone down and looked out the window at the backyard, at the fence I built, at the trees I planted at the garden that kept growing whether anyone noticed or not. I did not reply right away, not because I was punishing him, but because I needed to be sure that whatever I said next came from a solid place inside me, not from the old habit of rushing to forgive just because I was afraid of losing him. I do not know if Dominic will truly change. I do not know if we will sit at this table again and share a meal that means what it should mean. I do not know if the apology was the beginning of something real or just words typed quickly to ease his own guilt. But I know this. Whatever comes next, I will not abandon myself to make room for someone else. Not again. Here is what I have learned, and I am telling you this not as advice but as something I earned the hard way. Loving your children does not mean erasing yourself. Sacrifice does not mean surrender. And sometimes the most powerful thing a father can do is not fight, not yell, not beg, but simply stand in his own house on his own 2 feet and say enough. I built this life with my hands. The floors, the fences, the garden, the pipes I fixed in 1,000 strangers' homes to keep the lights on in mine. This house is not just a building. It is the proof of everything I survived and everything I gave. And it belongs to me. Not because I am selfish, but because I am worth it. I was always worth it. I just forgot for a while. If you are listening to this story right now, and something in it feels familiar, if you have been giving and giving until there is nothing left, if you have been living for someone else so long that you forgot what your own voice sounds like, then I want you to hear this. You are allowed to stop. You are allowed to put yourself first. Not because you have stopped loving, but because you cannot pour from a cup that has been empty for years. Tonight I am going to fire up the smoker. I am going to season a brisket crack, open a cold beer, and sit in my backyard under the Texas sky and eat a meal I cooked for no one but myself. And for the first time in a very long time, that is going to be more than enough. Now I want to ask you something before you go. Have you ever given so much to someone that you forgot to save anything for yourself? And if so, what was the moment you finally realized it was time to take something back? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one,